Navigation is a field of study that focuses on the process of monitoring and controlling the movement of a craft or vehicle from one place to another. The field of navigation includes four general categories: land navigation, marine navigation, aeronautic navigation, and space navigation. It is also the term of art used for the specialized knowledge used by navigators to perform navigation tasks. All navigational techniques involve locating the navigator's position compared to known locations or patterns. Navigation, in a broader sense, can refer to any skill or study that involves the determination of position and direction. In this sense, navigation includes orienteering and pedestrian navigation. For information about different navigation strategies that people use, visit Human Navigation. History. In the European medieval period, navigation was considered part of the set of 7 mechanical arts, none of which were used for long voyages from across open ocean. Polynesian navigation is probably the earliest form of open ocean navigation, though it was based on memory and observation rather than on scientific methods or instruments. Early Pacific Polynesians used the motion of stars, weather, the position of certain wildlife species, or the size of waves to find the path from one island to another. Maritime navigation using scientific instruments such as the mariner's astrolabe first occurred in the Mediterranean during the Middle Ages, although land astrolabes were invented in the Hellenistic period and existed in classical antiquity and the Islamic Golden Age. The oldest record of a sea astrolabe is that of Majorcan astronomer Ramon Lull dating from 1295. The perfecting of this navigation instrument is attributed to Portuguese navigators during early Portuguese discoveries in the Age of Discovery. The earliest known description of how to make and use a sea astrolabe comes from Spanish cosmographer Melvin Melpro's Cespedes Art de Navegar, published in 1551. Based on the principle of the archipendulum used in constructing the Egyptian pyramids, open seas navigation using the astrolabe and the compass started during the Age of Discovery in the 15th century. The Portuguese began systematically exploring the Atlantic coast of Africa from 1418, under the sponsorship of Prince Henry. In 1488, Bartholomew Diaz reached the Indian Ocean by this route. In 1492, the Spanish monarchs funded Christopher Columbus's expedition to sail west to reach the Indies by crossing the Atlantic, which resulted in the discovery of America. In 1498, a Portuguese expedition commanded by Vasco da Gama reached India by sailing around Africa, opening up direct trade with Asia. Soon, the Portuguese sailed further eastward, to the Spice Islands in 1512, landing in China 1 year later. The first circumnavigation of the Earth was completed in 1522 with the Magellan-Elcano expedition, a Spanish voyage of discovery led by Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan and completed by Spanish navigator Juan Sebastián Elcano after the former's death in the Philippines in 1521. The fleet of 7 ships sailed from Sanlúcar de Barrameda in southern Spain in 1519, crossed the Atlantic Ocean and, after several stopovers, rounded the southern tip of South America. Some ships were lost, but the remaining fleet continued across the Pacific, making a number of discoveries including Guam and the Philippines. By then, only 2 galleons were left from the original 7. The Victoria, led by Elcano, sailed across the Indian Ocean and north along the coast of Africa, to finally arrive in Spain in 1522. 3 years after its departure, the Trinidad sailed east from the Philippines, trying to find a maritime path back to the Americas, but was unsuccessful. The Eastward Route across the Pacific, also known as the Tornaviage, was only discovered 40 years later, when Spanish cosmographer Andrés de Urdaneta sailed from the Philippines, north to parallel 39 degrees, and hit the eastward Kuroshio Current, which took its galleon across the Pacific. He arrived in Acapulco on October 8, 1565. Etymology. The term stems from 1530s, from Latin navigation from navigatus, pp. If navigare, to sail, sail over, go by sea, steer a ship, from navus, ship, and the root of agere, to drive. Basic concepts. Latitude. Roughly, the latitude of a place on Earth is its angular distance north or south of the equator. Latitude is usually expressed in degrees ranging from 0 degrees at the equator to 90 degrees at the north and south poles. The latitude of the North Pole is 90 degrees north, and the latitude of the South Pole is 90 degrees south. Mariners calculated latitude in the Northern Hemisphere by sighting the North Star Polaris with a sextant and using sight reduction tables to correct for height of eye and atmospheric refraction. The height of Polaris in degrees above the horizon is the latitude of the observer, within a degree or so. Longitude. Similar to latitude, the longitude of a place on Earth is the angular distance east or west of the prime meridian or Greenwich meridian. Longitude is usually expressed in degrees ranging from 0 degrees at the Greenwich meridian to 180 degrees east and west. Sydney, for example, has a longitude of about 151 degrees east. New York City has a longitude of 74 degrees west. For most of history, mariners struggled to determine longitude. Longitude can be calculated if the precise time of a sighting is known. Lacking that, one can use a sextant to take a lunar distance that, with a nautical almanac, can be used to calculate the time at 0 longitude. Reliable marine chronometers were unavailable until the late 18th century and not affordable until the 19th century. For about 100 years, from about 1767 until about 1850, mariners lacking a chronometer used the method of lunar distances to determine Greenwich time to find their longitude. A mariner with a chronometer could check its reading using a lunar determination of Greenwich time. Loxodrome in navigation. A rhomboline is a line crossing all meridians of longitude at the same angle, i.e., a path derived from a defined initial bearing. That is, upon taking an initial bearing, one proceeds along the same bearing, without changing the direction as measured relative to true or magnetic north.